Today we are going to talk about human memory. You know, the memory is our ability to remember. The word memory is coming from the Latin root memoria, which means remembrance. So it is our ability to retain and remember the past experiences with or without awareness, with or without effort. Memory involves a few mechanisms, very dynamic mechanisms of storing, retaining, and retrieving. So it is a capacity to encode, to store, and to retrieve information. Where do we get this information from? It is coming through our senses, our 5 senses, to receive information. And then we organize and alters it, and then we put it in a safer place. And then whenever it is needed, we retrieve it. So basically, this human capacity of memory enables us to use our past experiences or information which is already been stored in our system to use it for the future. So there are basically 3 processes or components or operations involved in this human memory system. These are the 3 interrelated components. One is encoding, second is storage, and the third is retrieval. So what is encoding? Encoding is the process that puts information to be remembered into a form that the memory system can accept and use. See, let us imagine a computer. Just you imagine Google. You are typing, what is the weather in New York City right now? You're typing these words, and the computer immediately gives you the result. Do you think that what you're typing is exactly how the computer is understanding? It is not. Computer has its own programming language. It understands the encoded words, phrases, sentences, and then it understands. You must have seen people doing this computer programming who just puts certain symbols and alphabets and numbers, and then at the end of the time, it becomes when you type, how old are you? The computer gives an answer. So there is a process of encoding happening already there in the computers, and similarly in our human system as well. So how you transform a physical sensory input of any of the senses into a kind of representation that can be understood and placed in the memory is called this encoding. So it is receiving our sensory input and transforming it into a code that can be stored. Second process is called the storage. We know that we have in the computer again, there is something called the ROM and the RAM. So this storage is very essential to whatever that is been encoded. So the storage of the memory is the process of retaining whatever that you have encoded, which is to be placed in somewhere. So this is a process of retaining the encoded information into the memory. It is called the storage. A very, very simple thing. It is holding the information in the memory over the time. So we will understand, which are the ways or which are the types of this storage in a few minutes. And the third process is called the retrieval. Retrieval is calling back. It is a process of gaining access to the already encoded and processed and stored information when it is to be used. As I mentioned earlier, this retrieval may not always happen with your awareness. It may even come without your awareness, without your conscious effort. So this retrieval is the bringing into consciousness, into awareness, this whatever information that is already been stored in your memory system. Now, as we proceed further, let me just talk about the 3 types of memory or 3 systems of memory. There is something called a sensory memory, and then another stage is called the short-term memory or working memory, and then there is something called the long-term memory. And before explaining each and every stage of it further, I just wanted to let you just feel like, sensory memory is a very, very, very short period of gathering the information, which is many times it is very much less than a second. And the short-term memory is probably up to 15 to 20 seconds, but definitely less than a minute. And long-term memory is definitely something which is being stored in our systems for really some time. And this long-term memory can also be looked through another set of divisions, which is called explicit memory and implicit memory. The word explicit, as we know, it is conscious memory. Implicit is unconscious memory. And then it can also be further understood through the explicit memory can be understood as a declarative memory, which involves includes facts and events. And that again can be understood in terms of episodic memory and semantic memory. Episodic memory means, the memory of the information of those things which happened as an event in your life or experience that you had in your life. And semantic memory is like concepts and facts and things like that. So for something to become a memory, we all know that it must be first picked up by one or more of our senses. Then only it can become a memory. If it is not been picked, it is gone. So let me just explain to you a concept. Imagine you're walking to a busy airport or a railway station or place like that where there is a lot of commotion and movement. In an airport, as you walk in, you see people are rushing about and passengers moving through the security, and people are talking and laughing and crying, and it's definitely a place where people say a goodbye to their loved ones as well. So there is a lot of hugging and crying and laughing and talking. So as you walk in and you're basically glancing through a large set of people who are definitely in a picture, and you're just looking through, and you may not remember anything, and then you notice that there is a video screen which talks about the status of the flights, and you're looking at it, and you just looked, and everything is there. Your flight is coming into the gate number 10, and you're just going through that, and all of a sudden you're like, what? Oh my God, it's delayed again. See, you just glanced to the screen and said everything is fine, and all of a sudden you remember that, did I see something different there? So you're looking at the screen and say, yes, my God, it's already been half an hour delayed, and now it's again delayed another 20 minutes because of the weather, whatever that may be the reason. So this sort of that in a flash of a second, you're looking at the screen, and then you kind of felt like you sensed and you saw something which is called the sensory memory. And all other information which you see has gone. So the incident may seem at first to you have more to do with the pain of the modern travel with the memory, but then it is definitely not just the delay in that sequence of the flight status is not that is bothering you, but rather it is our ability to kind of save the information which is probably meaningful to you. That is what is staying with your memory system, which in other words called sensory memory. So sensory memory is the shortest term element of memory. It is our ability to look at an item for a second and then remember what it looked like. It is said that this memory system, the sensory processes are happening approximately some 200 to 500 milliseconds after an item is perceived. So we know that this, we are using our 5 senses. We have this sensory register, sensory memory. To be understood, as I said about the airport when you're walking in, there are a lot of people. So it contains a large capacity of information. Whether you need it or not, that you're glancing through a lot of people, but you at this point are looking at the screen, and out of all the 35 gates, you are worried only about the gate number 10. So the large capacity of information is there, and you're taking it, everything else is gone. This short duration is what is important at this point. So these are the very important areas. Now let us look at this short-term memory. So now we said sensory memory, now we come to the short-term memory. Short-term memory, compared to the sensory memory, it is a limited capacity. And for you to take any information from the sensory memory to the short-term memory, you need a rehearsal. This rehearsal maintains the information which probably will take you to the next level of it, which is called the long-term memory. This has a capacity of about 7 plus or minus 2 items to be stored at a time, which I will explain in the coming minutes. And then it is understood that the duration of the short-term memory is about 18 to 20 seconds, definitely less than a minute. And there can be also cases like the short-term memory can also associate with whatever is already stored in your long-term memory can be retrieved and used here in the short-term memory as well, when in the case of working memory. So now let us talk about a concept called the Miller's magical number. It was George Miller who discovered, we humans have a capacity of the short-term memory to remember things probably 7 plus or minus 2 ways. To say whatever that we remember, whatever that we are going to remember has to be in the form of 7 or 8 or 9. Like if I say numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the maximum capacity of remembering a chunk, a group of information, which is also called whatever that has a meaning or made together is called a chunk. So this plus or minus of 2 of 7 is chunks of information that could reside in our short-term memory simultaneously. I will give an example. So let us consider the following list of 21 letters. It is, you can read it, I hope, P, B, S, F, O, X, C, N, N, A, B, C, C, B, S, M, T, V, N, B, C. Doesn't make any sense? Doesn't make any sense to me. So let us consider this list, and I'm going to convert them into 7 meaningful chunks. Now let us read it again. The same words I converted into here, like PBS, Fox, CNN, ABC, CBS, MTV, and NBC. So now that it has been converted into something meaningful, so it was very difficult for us to recall the letters after one exposure, but suppose they were presented as meaningful letters or chunks, it will be remembered. So our ability to remember is, they say, 7 plus or minus from the available information. So there are 2 types of rehearsal we have in our remembering process. One is called maintenance rehearsal. Maintenance rehearsal is very important for the students. There are students who read a lot. When the parents say oh, are you studying, honey? And you're like, yes, I'm studying. And the parents can hear you sitting in another room and reading it loud continuously. And I used to say when students are studying, their neighbors study better than the students themselves. Because in the morning onwards, you are reading it loud, but then you don't study, the neighbors study. Let us look at what is maintenance rehearsal. Maintenance rehearsal is information in short-term memory, which is held in a method called maintenance rehearsal, which is the repeating of information silently or aloud, so that it is recalled immediately when needed. So we are trying to maintain it. We are reading it out loud or silently going through it, and then once you finish one paragraph, you come back and reading it again, and you're reading it again, or you're understanding it again. So that is called a maintenance rehearsal. And the next one is called elaborative rehearsal. Elaborative rehearsal is the thinking about the meaning of the information and connecting it to other information already stored in the memory. So the moment you see this PBS and Fox and CNN and ABC, you already know that what is it? This is TV channels, right? You already have an information which is stored there. That is the reason this elaborate rehearsal makes it very, very easy for you to remember things better, because now that 21 letters is not valid anymore. They are only 7 concepts, 7 chunks. Only PBS, Fox, CNN, ABC, CBS, MTV, and NBC. So now let us look at the long-term memory. Long-term memory, see, now we have come to come from sensory memory, which is having a lot of information, but a very short period of time. And then the second is short-term memory with a comparatively shorter capacity of information for a shorter period of time. And now coming to the long-term memory, here the capacity is virtually unlimited. It's like you're storing everything in your rack one by one, and it's been kept there. And how much is it kept for? I would say it is for the lifetime. It is forever. And information which is organized according to the meaning, as we mentioned in the chunks, meaning, and then it is linked associatively. When I talk about this, you need to think about a computer concept called a defragmentation. In a defragmentation process, those of you know computers and those who are doing this can understand, the files are being kept in the hard disk in certain areas, which probably in the video formats and the musics and Word and PDF and photos and pictures and other animations, whatever that you have in the computer is going to a particular place and it's been kept there. And once you delete probably 10 gigabytes of a data from the system, which includes maybe a couple of movies and some hundreds of pictures and maybe a few music files as well, this hard disk will be kept blank in that area. So the system defragmentation is done manually to a computer, which makes all the video files to go to their designated place, and all the music files to go to the designated files. And a computer will show you a place where everything is placed in the right place, because it has been associated with the meaning, with the types supposed to be. Now let us look at the types of long-term memory. Long-term memory can be divided, as we mentioned previously, like in various formats, and one is called explicit or declarative memory. The word itself is, I believe, very, very explanatory, and declarative memory or explicit memory is remembering of the memory which are involved with the facts and knowledge and personal experiences. It is talking about the fact. Semantic memory, which is a part of the explicit memory, which is impersonal facts and everyday knowledge which are connected there. And episodic memory is a personal experience linked with specific times and places or experiences that you had. For example, if I'm talking about my last birthday party, or someone who got married, or maybe my brother's wedding anniversary that I attended, or things like that. So any event, an episode that happened, that is talking about the episodic memory. And then the second type of the long-term memory is called implicit memory or procedural memory. It is talking about the skills. Those of you, I hope everybody knows bicycling. And many of you might know driving, swimming. All these things are coming under the procedural memory. So this is a long-term memory of conditioned response and learned skills. So driving is a very good example, I believe, for this. So let us now look at, before I conclude, what we were just talking about, like a memory organizational chart. We began by saying which are the three processes, like the encoding, the storage, and the retrieval. And the memory chart begins with a sensory memory, and which is a very, very, very short period of time and the large information. And then it is been, by your attention, that some of those large sum has been accepted and then taken to the short-term memory, and then you processed it, you make some connection to that, and then that is called the short-term memory. Third one is long-term memory, in which we already said, like the procedural memory, the declarative memory, the semantic memory, and the episodic memory. We will continue in the next hour.